So now we're sitting at 0. And you got to set this up so everything is just sort of right, that this is all aligned like it was supposed to be, and this is all aligned like it's supposed to be. Three-dimensional balances. So you have the overall weight, which these have been done. See this? Well, I guarantee you this doesn't weigh 995 grams when this one weighs 696 grams. This is Matt's either tired or his dyslexia breaking in right here. Seriously.
There.
You got the blue?
Oh, you got the black.
Here, let me grab the blue. So what we'll do is dimensionally, we'll weigh these. We'll weigh them just for total weight first, and see how far they are off, because that will make you decide maybe on where you're going to take weight off or how you're going to take it off for general weight. But we were within a half a gram on these weights, so half a gram is pretty good. The training I took from Ben Strader at EFI University, who builds 11,000 RPM V8s for drag race motors, and his motors are, I think he said they're $85,000. And he says you can't buy one, you have to buy two. He says because if you can't afford to buy two, you can't afford to have his engines. So if one blows up, you have another one to put in and send the other one back to have it redone. But they're $85,000 to rebuild them. That's you supply the core engine. So
And it's only got to last 5 seconds.
yeah, and basically the big thing in the country now is drag racing. You know, that's what a lot of the big engine builders are doing now. They're building for these people that go out on the weekends and try to make money drag racing, and they dump money into their cars. So he has a Spintron, which is a camera, a high-speed, high-resolution camera, and he's got a block with a hole cut in the side, and it's a camera that takes a picture of the whole camshaft system, and then it graphs it. Okay, and so they can spin the cam up at 10,000, 11,000, and see the reaction of the profiles of the cam. And so in NASCAR, because NASCAR, you're allowed X amount of lift. You know, your cam can have, from the center of the cam, can have this much lift, no more. But they bend the rule, so what they do is they make the ramp of the cam so steep in the RPM that they run, just the RPM range that they run, that the cam follower, that follows the cam, the what do they call it, the lifter, stupid V8 stuff, the lifter actually, it accelerates so fast it lifts off the cam and gives them more lift, and like a ski jump comes back down. I mean, think about that. 9,000 RPM. The lifters are actually leaving the cam surface because the ramp is accelerating so fast, and they jump off the end and then land smoothly on the other side so they can get a little more lift to get more power. And that's part of their engine development. That's just one of the tricks that they say some of them use. But he has a machine to measure all that. So, I mean, the stuff that he does is just, it is amazing. This pairs by comparison, but at least I've been trained. So what we'll do now, since we've measured the full weight of them, and we're within a half a gram, we're going to measure the ends. And what Ben said, he said he doesn't really worry about rod balancing much anymore. Neither does he piston balancing, because he gets most of his pistons from CP, I think. He says he's never had a CP piston further than like 1/10 of a gram off. He says they make them so accurately that they're all like identical. So he doesn't even weigh them anymore. And he said with rods, he says he hasn't noticed a lot of performance gains in what he has done. So he still balances them, but so this is how we'll do it. So we've just got a regular Chinese scale here. That's all it is. And we'll put that, and hopefully, because these rods are so massive, you know what? Let's do this. Let's do it the other way. And I'm not gonna do them all because it takes a while. So we'll put that on. We'll tare to 0. So now we're sitting at 0. And you got to set this up so everything is just sort of right, that this is all aligned like it was supposed to be, and this is all aligned like it's supposed to be. And so now essentially what we're doing is just weighing the mass at sort of a fulcrum point from the center, but we're weighing the tips up by the piston. And so this one has 206.3. Now, in Yankee land here, we do it all in grams. The unit is grams. So I'm going to lay this one out at 206.3. And I'll take this off. And then I got to set the other one up as close as I can to the same thing. 203.3. That's a lot of weight. But do you see the point? So we'll go 20, and then we'll just weigh these. And we do this with pretty much all of our engines, unless... So it looks like we have a heavy one, unfortunately. That one's a 204.5. And so we'll go all the way down and we'll measure each one. And then if our weights seem off, if we think, something's a little skitty-wampus about, like say we have, like this is really heavy. So we're playing 1.5 grams, almost 3 grams on that one. 3 grams might sound like not very much, but when you're grinding it off the top of a rod, 3 grams is a hell of a lot of weight. So I would probably re-weigh that. And we'll do all of the little ends like this, and then we'll come around and reverse it, put this on, tear that out. Tear, when I say tear, it just means, if you've played with scales before, tearing it means setting it back to 0. So it basically, with all that on there, the only thing we're weighing now is the rod, because with this on there it was 0. So now we'll take the big ends and we'll do the same thing. Now,
Level your rod.
oh, it's my rod. Oh yeah, it's a little high, isn't it? Brent. You know Brent and Sawyer? Brent made this for me. He just saw the plans of one online and just buzzed it out. I know buzzing it out seems a little eccentric, So this one is, let's see how close we are. This is a 492. Dead on, 492. But you can see the process is not, it's not, you know, with precision or racing engine building like this, nothing about it is absolutely nothing about it is fast. Nothing is fast. Nothing is fast. It's all slow as molasses. Now, if I was building this, building an engine, oh, just so you know, that is 490. Dead on. So you see how that works? You see how it works? And what we'll do when we're ready to do the rods, we'll start grinding them. If I was building just a street engine with regular camshafts, all that stuff, you wouldn't even have to worry about rod balancing because your engine, for example, the engines that I build, the gray car that was been here forever, you guys saw it, you know, I finished the engine. We just had regular SC cams in that produce their maximum horsepower at like 6150, 6200 RPM. They have a red line of like 67, but they produce their max horsepower down at 62. 62 isn't very much revs. I mean, it's a lot for a V8, but other than that, it's for a 911 or for that stupid little thing over there, you know, that plays at 86, you know, all day long. So would we just go through this endless time of balancing these? On a street motor, probably not. Wouldn't even know the difference because the motor's not revving up. But our motor, with the projected cams, we want to go past if we need to. I know this will probably be more me than if we need to, we'll drive this Mazda RPM-ish. You know, if we're going easier, we're shifting at what, 65, 66, 67? Isn't that about where, watching your videos? Right in there, Andy?
Yeah.
But if you push it, you'll go 72, 73. We'll set the rev limiter at 75 on this, so we can push all the way to 75. We could push to 8 with our crankcase, shuffle pinned and everything like that, but we saw what happened the last time we pushed it. And it would be Andy's fault then.
We don't need a rev limiter.
Well, and the thing is, the rev limiter wouldn't have helped us anyway.
Yeah.
Because it was a, now if you looked at the speed that that car went into first gear, that car went into first gear at 81 miles an hour. How can a car go into gear, first gear at 81 miles an hour? How could I even do that? And it went in like it wasn't, like nothing. So, and then I let the clutch out. Thinking I was in, you know what, I was going from second to third, thinking I was in third, you know, and when you shift the Miata, you shift it pretty fast. Yeah, you drop the clutch and that thing goes, no rev limiter stops that. Rev limiter just stops under acceleration. It doesn't stop over rev. So we're at 490. We got a 2 gram difference there. So what we'll do on the big ends, what we have to do on the small ends, is we take, and we just have a belt, you know, a disc sander over there with a 6-inch disc on it, or not 6-inch, 8-inch disc on it. And you'll just take it off the end here and go shh. And you get them within, I don't know, you're probably happy, if they're way off, probably happy at a gram. You know, if they're close, you get them down to a half. And then on the other side, you would just take off this support right here. And that's a strengthening support, so you don't want to take off a ton. And you just there until and then you're balanced. So after all that, what you have to try to take into mind also is looking at your numbers on your total weights. And you're hoping that you're taking the weight off of the rods that tend to be a little on the heavier side. Because if your lightest rod is the heaviest on the ends, there's something, there's an issue there. So you sort of have to watch what you're doing. I mean, it takes so much time to do this. I just wanted to show you how. Do you see how it's done? It's and this is how we set it up. Usually we lay them down and we write them all out, and then we'll do the pistons. And usually the pistons, especially if you use the J&Es, like those pistons in that right here. Like this is an example. The J&Es very seldom need, the J&Es very seldom need any work at all. This is the same size as our engine. This is what ours will look like. But you weigh them, and if they have a little bit of variance, you take the weight off. But taking weight off pistons is a little scarier. Let me show you. You grab a I've only got the Molly pistons, but we'll see. So these are the 8.5 to 1 Porsche OEM RS pistons, and you can't just go, oh, hey, let's take some, or you just can't do that with pistons. You got to be real careful. And so what you'll usually do is either come right down in the center here. You'll want to measure your height here, your thickness, because you can't go below 0.200 of an inch. You can't go below that because then this is too narrow and you could blast through. But right in here would be your first spot to take it, right at the bottom. The CP and the J&E, that's where they take their weight out, right here. Or you have to divide it between the two bosses that are below the pin.
So
right here.
Take a Dremel in there, or
well, most people call them Dremels. We call them fancier because we have to pay $400 or $500 for them. Dremels are $60. This handpiece is $400.
oh yeah, my dentist has one of those.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a 90-degree porting tool, and you'd get a round bit on there, and you just come in and take a little bit of weight off each one of those bosses down here, below there, because you can see on this piston, below the pin boss is by far where you've got the most mass. See it right there? You take it off where all this mass is, right there.
In a spec racing series where you can't modify these things, what do you do?
Yeah, but if we opened up your Rossini race motor, because there's no way they can spec that
Well,
unless they do a complete engine teardown.
and the runoffs they do. So,
Will they tear your engine down?
what Rossini does and Jim Drago does and X Factor is they'll take 600 pistons
Yeah, and match them all.
and match them all. 600 rods and match them all. And that's why you pay $6,000 or $7,000 for a stock Miata motor.
Yeah, yeah.
It has 2 horsepower more than.
Yeah, that has barely any more. But in the auto racing, that's something. So we'll do that. You'll lighten the piston, and then you'll measure the pins. And the pins are almost never off. I mean, if you think of all this stuff that has to be measured. Now, anything that rotates has to have a special balancer that somebody like me, unless you're like in a machine shop, you won't do. And so the rotating assemblies, which would be the crankshaft, the flywheel, the front pulley, they assemble those as one piece, and then they rotate that and balance them all into one piece. And most Porsche crankshafts don't need to be balanced. They're very, 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 they're like pieces of art. You guys seen the crankshaft to this? You guys have seen the crankshaft to this motor. They're works of art. They're nitrided. They're special hardness. Ours has been cross drilled. It's just we got some cool stuff to build this motor with. But I want you to be a part of it if you want to be a part of it. It's really interesting work. It's taken Jared a while to learn. Still learning, but we're both still learning. Like we do. And this is just one part of it. This is what you do before you even start assembling. all the little quirks and all the little things when you start into assembly is a whole different thing, and you'll see why that people get sort of a little more money for rebuilding Porsche motors, because when we start building that motor, you'll be going, what? Really? You know, the O-rings everywhere. It's just, they're really different. They're fun to build, and we'll make it like stupid, ridiculous. I mean, it'll get messed up eventually, but we'll make it stupid, ridiculous, pretty like this, you know, because clean parts don't break. We all know that. Clean parts don't break. We have the racing chains. We have everything to build it with. It'll be fun once we get to that point. There's the crankcase, and I know all of you have seen it before. We have those special pins in there, the shuffle pins, which are these right here. These are not normally there. That's so we can rev the motor up. If you rev one of these cases up too high, because they come together, they start to shuffle like this at high RPMs. And all the Porsche racing motors, they put these pins in to keep them from shuffling so you can rev them up, and they'll survive. All the way through like the 935s, they did this and everything. It's pretty cool. It's an expensive little deal that Havasu, Ollie's. There's only really 2 machine shops left in the country that work on these motors. I think this is $3,900, $4,000 to have those pins put in. Yeah, so it's not cheap. Now, did I pay $4,000? No. Brent again bought a 2.7 motor just off the cuff, real cheap, for $6,000 out of California. And it was a motor and transmission. We bought it a while back, and we decided to open it up just to see, and it had all this shuffle pin case and all this, and so I did horse trading. I did horse trading with Brent to get the racing stuff, because he's just building a regular motor, just a regular street motor to drive around. He doesn't really need it. So thanks to Brent, we've gotten he built this. Brent does a lot of stuff for me, and I help him as much as I can with all of his. Like last Friday, we went up and tuned carburetors in his garage on a 911 that he's got. So we just help each other out. He's a great guy, a really great guy. And parts like that. Plus, I wanted to show you. So these, and I'm going to make Jared do some of this, but that's where I spend a lot of time doing the porting. So these were 32 millimeter ports, and they've been opened out to 34 millimeters. Both of them, the intake and the exhaust. This is for that street motor right there. And it has a milder cam in it, but our ports will go to, let me see if I have it. And I've only worked on this one some. Got to replace a stud, unfortunately. So our heads have the same size valves, but and that machine work you did, this is why we do the machine work. See how the cylinder head comes off? And it has all this scarring on it.
That was Brent's occupation.
He's a pediatric dentist. Yeah, so, but these will go out to 37 or 38 right in there. So they're big, these are, because we're going to spend most of our time up at high RPMs. And so these take a lot more. I mean, literally, that, and the chips just fly everywhere. It's so, and then you take it and measure it, see where you're at, and you spin the measuring tool in there, and you have to make sure it's round, and it's almost miserable. Any questions? And I don't know why the hell school just ends and I don't have to teach anymore for like 3 months. And what am I doing? Anyway, any questions about, guys, anything?
When are you taking those metal off upon that?
Where?
Yeah.
We'll take it off. We'll take it off here,
Okay.
and we'll take it off here. And hopefully not much more than a gram and a half. You really don't want to lighten these up too much. And these are Porsche. We decided to not go with the H-beam connecting rods we decided to go with straight up good old Porsche connecting rods and ARP bolts. So, which hopefully it'll survive. Hopefully they'll survive Andy doing misshifts and stuff like that, like he does, you know. So, I don't know when we're gonna get this car on. I was hoping to get it on by July. How that's gonna be possible, I do not know. But we're gonna we can have a goal. Be nice to get it on the track in July, just for its first little, you know, see if it'll blow up or not. That's what we're gonna shoot for. That's a whole different battle. Okay, no questions? If you guys want, you can come up here and just play with this stuff. Play with it just a little bit so you can see. I mean, I'm up here doing this. That doesn't help anybody much. But if you want, you can. Because I want you guys to all of you to have the experience. If you want it. I mean, if you don't, if engine building isn't like something that you care about, then it's like, oh hum, you know? But they're nice pieces of artwork. Okay, the car. Oh, wait. Before anybody does anything.